What's up guys, Nate here from Lost Dutchman Leather. Today we are going to be looking at the Techsew 4800 Pro sewing machine and doing a full review of that. Hope you enjoy. So I've been considering my different options for sewing machines for a while, and I'd actually decided on the Techsew 2750 Pro, but then after emailing Ron from Techsew, he suggested the 4800 Pro, which is, I believe, their newest sewing machine, and it's kind of an upgraded 2750. A lot of cool features, excited to dive in. I'm going to show you guys some examples of the machine actually stitching, but before I do that, I want to give some design specifications. So, as I mentioned, this is the 4800 Pro from Techsew. This is a cylinder arm machine, but as you can see, it comes with a flatbed attachment, which is awesome. So basically that will allow you, we'll talk about it more later, but it basically allows you to do wallets if you want that on a flat surface so that you don't deal with a wobbly stitch. But it also, you can take the flatbed attachment off and it makes it super easy to do bags, which you have to have a lot of wiggle room to get those stitches right. This machine is equipped with a smart servo motor. It also has an auto needle positioning system, which is amazing, and I'll show you guys how that works. It also has a swing down edge guide, which I use pretty consistently. That is an awesome feature as well. And it has a dual tension system, which allows you to really dial in the tension on the thread. Before we actually look at the machine in action, I want to give you guys the thread size and the needle size that I'm using right now. I'm using a size 92 thread with a size 110/18 needle, depending on which measurement system you're using for the needle. Alright, so I have a little bifold card holder that has been glued. The edges have been sanded flush. I also beveled the edges before I stitch, and then I marked the stitching lines. So I'm going to set up the camera closer to the needle so you can get a good view of the stitch, and let's stitch this up. Alright, so the first thing I like to do is make sure that my edge guide right here that swings down is in line with the stitching line that I already marked. So I'm just going to check that. You can use the wheel on the side of the machine to bring down the needle just to check that it's good, and it looks good. And again, this is the swing down roller edge guide, which makes it super easy. There's also a laser, as you will see, a laser guide that is awesome. So I like to start the stitch on a wallet like this right after a corner. You don't want to start it on the corner because that'll make the back stitch look pretty messy. But right after a corner, I think, is the most concealed place to start and end the stitch. So I'm going to line up the wallet right there. Alright, so the automatic needle positioning system, which I mentioned earlier, is pretty cool. Basically what it is if you tap the pedal for the machine once, it'll do a full cycle of the needle, and it'll rest in the downward position. So probably the most useful area that's applied is when you're doing a 90-degree turn on a wallet. You can get to the corner, you can tap the pedal once, and it'll stop the stitch with the needle completely in the downward position. Then you can rotate the wallet and keep going on the stitch. But it's also super helpful for back stitching. You can just tap the pedal, does a full cycle, tap it again, and then bring it back forward. Also, you can't see, but there is a knee lift to lift the foot of the sewing machine. Also, a quick note on that, it came with a double-sided foot. I replaced it with a one-sided because that allows the edge guide to line up better. If you do the double-sided foot, you have to have the edge guide out to like here, and I don't stitch that far in, so just a quick note on that. Alright, so let's start stitching. You're going to want to make sure you're holding both the bobbin and the top thread tightly for the first couple stitches. That way it doesn't loosen up and get all messy. I'm going to tap the pedal once just to get it started. As you can see, it ends with the needle in the downward position. I'll tap that again. I'm going to do 3 stitches And then there is a lever you pull down over here to put the stitch in reverse. And I will again do 3 back stitches. Release that lever and start forward. And then once you're past there, you can start going a little bit faster. This does have a speed reducer on it, so I'm not going full pedal to the metal right now, but if I were to, it still would not be that fast because I have it reduced. Okay, so once you get to a corner, this is something you kind of just have to practice and learn, but I like to rotate it until it touches the edge guide, do a stitch, rotate till it touches that edge guide again, stitch, etc., repeat, and that gives me the best corners that I've been able to get. You do not want to move the leather while it is mid-stitch. That will mess up the size of the stitch. You might have some issues with the thread. We'll do the same thing on this corner. So this is full speed right now. As you can see, not very fast. Alright, so we're on the last corner coming up on where we began the stitch. Looks like we have about 2 more stitches till we hit that. So this can be pretty tricky to get this clean. Once I get to what looks like a stitch away, which is there I think, I'm going to lift up the foot and see where I'm at. And that actually landed right on the beginning stitch, so that is awesome. You can kind of plan for that as far as the design of the wallet goes, but there's always going to be a little bit of variance, just depending on how much you sand the edges and just little things. So I kind of got lucky here, but if it doesn't line up perfectly, you can use the manual wheel on the side of the machine to adjust the size of that last stitch just so it lines up nicely. So now I'm going to put it in reverse. I'm going to do a couple back stitches, and then if you tap the back of the pedal, it will bring the needle up and it'll stay there. Lift the presser foot up, pull it out, have clips right here. Alright, so as you can see there, we've got a nice clean stitch. Virtually no marks from the presser foot. And to achieve that, there's a spring on the top of the machine that if you loosen, it'll ease up the pressure from the presser foot, and that pretty much eliminated any marks on the leather for me, as you can see. Nice clean stitch. Corners look pretty good. And then we've got the back stitch here, which I still have to trim those threads, but looks pretty clean. So final thoughts about the Techsew 4800 Pro. I love it. I love this machine. Perfect for what I'm doing. It's good. It's a good in-between if you want to do wallets but also want to experiment with some bags. The flatbed attachment makes that super easy to do. I didn't show how to take it off, but it's really simple. There's a couple nuts there that you unscrew, and it comes off really easy. I've made 1 bag so far, and I'm going to be making some more. So that's a huge advantage. Yeah, not much more to say. Clean stitch, tight stitch. You're going to want to experiment with dialing in the tension for the top thread. That took me a while to get right. But if you have any questions about which machine you want, or any machine in particular, give Ron at Techsew an email. He's super helpful. If you're looking for a sewing machine, I 100% recommend this one right here. Great for just about everything. It's very versatile. So one more thing I wanted to talk about was the main difference between a saddle stitch, which is done by hand, and a machine stitch, which would be a lock stitch. I'm going to put up a graphic right now. So as you can see there, The lock stitch is a top thread and a bottom thread that basically wrap around each other in the middle of the stitch, and the top thread remains on the top, the bottom thread remains on the bottom of the project. In a saddle stitch, you have the top thread crossing the bottom thread in the stitch and then coming around the other side and kind of weaving like that. So the saddle stitch is a much stronger stitch. Hand stitching does produce a better looking stitch in my opinion, but that is not to say that a machine stitch can't look good and also be tough. Plenty of machine sewn goods last 10, 15, 20 years if it's a good machine and if it's a good thread. This is obviously a great machine, and the thread that I'm using is a bonded nylon, which should be very tough. And as you may have seen, I am releasing a complete product collection of machine sewn goods. This is going to allow me to have a quicker turnaround, number one, and number two, offer the products at a more affordable price. If your thing is hand stitched, totally understand that, and that option is never going to go away. This is just an alternative if you don't want to shell out that much cash for a wallet, or if you need one quicker. If you have any questions, drop a comment. If you have any videos in particular that you'd like to see, any more about the machine, I can do that. There are a lot of things that I could do videos about, just about this machine. Maybe some tips and tricks, etc. Let me know what you'd like to see in the future. Subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to like this video. We'll see you next time.